Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I are going to be covering some news that came out late last night in relation to CleanSpark's ATM. Now the timing on this one is super questionable, comes out just after both the CEO and chairman were selling millions of shares. It's leading into a long weekend. What I will say is CleanSpark traditionally has been a great steward of capital, and generally when they do these big ATM raises, they put that money to work right away. So in today's video, we're going to be dissecting this news and the series of events that we think may happen next. Now, before we get into it, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a big help to myself, the channel. Anthony loves it, and it gets this content to other people like you. If you're not currently subscribed to the channel, McNallie Money, feel free to join, and let us know in the comment section below what you thought about the move from CleanSpark here, how you think this money will be used, and your outlook for 2024. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. We've got Anthony Power, our resident Bitcoin mining analyst. A little bit of peculiar news last night, Anthony. Now, we've had Matt Schultz. He's the chairman of CleanSpark. He's been on the channel a number of times. He filed to sell some shares alongside Zachary Bradford last month, who's the CEO of CleanSpark. Now, lo and behold, last night they come out, they amend that prospectus. They're selling more shares, Anthony. This is going into a long weekend, and then we get some news that the ATM has actually been upsized from 500 million to 800 million, so a $300 million upsize. So a lot of pieces happening last night after market close. Obviously, trading's closed today, leading to a lot of questions, stipulation, concern, confusion over the weekend. So we wanted to jump on here, get your take on this, Anthony. What do you make of this situation?
Firstly, the timing of the announcements leads to sort of like a bad taste, because it was announced after the market close on a holiday weekend, and so obviously a lot of people were left short chains and able to do what they could do with the stock price. If we just go back to January, so January the 5th, the company announced an ATM, and it was about 500 million to obviously spend on equipment and infrastructure to get to their impressive hash rate goal. I mean, they're at 16 at the moment, about to be 17, with a target of 20 by mid-year and a target at the end of the year of 32 exahash. So, no one can say that they've got impressive plans, and they've nearly achieved every one of their targets going forward. But last night we saw, as well as the update for this amendment, so this 500 million increase it to 800 million, there was also a notification that not just one set of shares had been sold, but effectively both chairman and CEO had sold two tranches of shares in February and in March, totaling somewhere in the region of about $32 million between them. So I think, in Matthew's case, probably just over 15 million, in Zach's case, closer to 16.5 million. So the announcements of that and the announcements of further dilution coincided there, created a bit of a spin in social media land last night. But if we go back to October, what you got to remember is CleanSpark was a company that was valued at probably about 600 million in October. And it's been growing and growing. It's used the ATM more aggressively than any other mining company over the last sort of 16 months. They've literally sold the company 3 or 4 times. And shareholders, they don't like dilution unless they can see it to be accretive in growth. Well, no one can say that CleanSpark haven't grown. They're already sort of like, reaching out to these new targets we've just alluded to. So everything's going right in that place there. And we know that they need more finance to get to those targets. But I think last night it was the sort of like the timing of these sales of the shares. And Matthew's been on Twitter or X in recent days, and explained that they put these filings in well in advance of the sale dates and set targets and things like that. So but it just seems when you get the news at the same time as the news comes out for an ATM increase, it sort of like makes you wonder. They've benefited from those prices, and all of a sudden the price dropped to $17 last night post market. I think it recovered a little bit to like 19, but it was at $23 at the start of the day. So that was a big drop.
So here's my thoughts, Anthony, because I've been reading a lot. You said this has been generating quite a buzz on X and on social media platforms. I've been reading about it. It is ironic or funny, I guess. I remember the tweet from Matt Schultz saying, hey, this was a pre-planned thing for Zach's birthday at predetermined prices. So you and I had a chuckle if he's aging quick or a second birthday or whatever. In my opinion, realistically, you guys, they earn this money. Part of their compensation is shares. Just like you and me, they're welcome to sell those shares whenever they want. I do think the timing was very interesting. However, Anthony, I will say, traditionally, when they've issued big ATMs, they've quickly come to market and said, hey, here's the money we got and here's what we're doing with it. So I'm wondering, I've been seeing, is there M&A going on? Is there something that came up that's $100 million that they didn't expect? Is there something so lucrative that they had to come out with this announcement? These guys are very smart. We've talked to them a lot. They realize that upsizing the ATM coincidingly with selling shares is not a good look on a holiday weekend. So there's got to be more than meets the eye to this one. And the other thing I wanted to say, Anthony, just in relation to dilution, because we hear a lot of people in the comments saying, oh, diluting. If you own, for example, 6% of a $1 billion company or 1% of a $6 billion company, it's the exact same amount of equity in the company. So I just want people to understand that CleanSpark may have issued 2, 3, 4 times their original shares this year, but they've grown in excess 700-800% in terms of share price. So we need to take it with a grain of salt. They've proven that they're good stewards of money in the past. If you're invested in this company, you should trust leadership with your money. Now they have more money to deploy. So I will say that in their defense, Anthony, and in defense of all of these ATMs. The other thing I really like about CleanSpark, as opposed to some of the other companies we've talked about on the channel, Bitdeer, for example, yesterday, CleanSpark's share price is in a very good spot. So when they're issuing shares right now, they're getting good bang for their buck. Some of these other companies, as we heard in the Bitdeer interview, feel like their stock's a little bit undervalued right now. So it puts you in a very precarious situation if you're issuing ATM, but you're also saying you're undervalued. So I just wanted to throw in those couple cents, Anthony, because I've been reading through it. I've been mulling it over last night, and that's what I've come up with. I'll flip it back to you for any thoughts on this one. Now, my question, I guess, is where is this money going to be used? Or what's your guess? More machines?
Well, they have options to buy further machines to get to significant growth, but to get to 32 exahash this year, there'll still be machine payments to achieve that. So, potentially, this might get them closer to fulfilling what they require this year. But they've already alluded to the fact that they're going to try and get to 50 exahash by the end of 2025. And when does that process start? We know they've got facilities to get them to 20 exahash. We know that and those facilities, those recent facilities, cost somewhere in the region of about $350,000 to $400,000 per megawatt. So it's facilities aren't cheap to buy. So they're going to have to look for facilities probably post the halving for that extra jump from 20 to 32 exahash. And, I think if we'd have come out with this podcast last night, I think we'd have been a little bit more sort of like, staying on the fact that they sold shares. I mean, the timing of that is not good, but like you're absolutely saying, this company had a market capitalization of probably 600,000 in October, reached $1 billion in November, reached $2 billion in early December, and currently, before the drop last night, was well over $4 billion. So, there's a 6.5-7x in market capitalization. So shareholders should be still pleased if they were holding shares prior to October, that their share price has gone up, significantly. I mean, they did utilize the ATM last year, and that probably suppressed the share price. Once they stopped utilizing that ATM, we then saw the surge in share price in the latter part of November, December. And then we saw it surge again in January when all the other share prices were actually dropping. There's only 3 or 4 miners that are probably in the green at the close of the market last night. So CleanSpark was one of them. I think Cypher Mining was another stock. And then you have the likes of TeraWulf as well. So there wasn't many stocks that are actually are actually green this year. Most of the mining stocks are actually down, even though the Bitcoin price is significantly high, probably 70% year to date up. So, we know that, you've articulated there well that we know that this money, this extra 300 million, will be used to grow the business. And no one's taken that away from CleanSpark. What they've done in 18 months is been amazing. I just feel that, that the timing last night for shareholders on the sales, which reflected probably about 20% of their stock ownership. So they weren't selling the whole amount, but they're selling 20%. And if I go back to sort of like 3 years ago, we had a similar instance with a company in the UK who were valued at £1 billion in them days, Argo Blockchain. And I remember quite clearly that their CEO, Peter Wall, he sold a significant amount of his shares, and then 8 days later announced to the markets that they put a prospectus in place for a dilution, giving a 20% discount on the share price. And that left a really, really bad taste in Argo Blockchain shareholders' mouths, and they've never recovered from that date. Everything seems to slide from that date there. So I'm not saying that will happen with CleanSpark. I think, you're right there. I think this is only going from strength to strength, and shareholders should, look to sort of like hear news that will probably come out, in this next week or 2 weeks, where that money is sort of like going to be spent, and, get them back on track. But, even at the price at the moment, if the Bitcoin price still keeps going or stays at this level here, you can see CleanSpark and a number of these other shares, probably start playing catch up again. So, I don't think it's over for CleanSpark by a long way at the moment.
No, I don't think it's over either. And I will say, I thought about it last night too. These guys, they may have sold a ton of shares, but they also still have a ton of shares, and a lot more than anyone watching this channel. So you can bet their interests are still aligned. And the way I like to think about the ATMs is, if you feel like the company's overvalued, then you're getting a deal on the ATM because you're selling shares for more than you should be. If you feel like the company's undervalued, then you're getting a deal with the shares you hold. So either way, there's some benefit to it, as long, like you said, Anthony, as they put that money to good work, which CleanSpark and team have showed they can do in the past. So we'll leave it up to you guys. The verdict, or the judge, is out for the weekend here. We'll see what happens Monday. I would expect some more news or some big announcements next week. You know where to find your updates. We also have the Hut 8 interview coming out shortly after this today, so stay tuned for that one, you guys. Very exciting stuff from Asher and team. Anthony, I'll throw it to you for any closing thoughts.
Yeah, one closing remarks was coming out again on the various social media was the discussion, and we've had it with previous podcasts. Is this discussion about HODL versus selling Bitcoin? And we know that CleanSpark are probably going to get close to 5,000 Bitcoin by the end of March on their balance sheet. And where do people see that as opposed to selling HODL? I'll be interested to see in the comments what people, what their views are, because, we've seen some very strong views from the likes of Paul Prager, who's the CEO of TeraWulf, and Dan Roberts from Iris Energy. But we've equally seen strong views of HODL from the likes of from Hut 8 and from the likes of from Marathon and Matthew himself at CleanSpark. So it'd be interesting to see what your point of view is. Put it in the comments and give us an indication. We'll cover another podcast on that in the future. But yeah.
Yeah, great point, Anthony. I guess Dan and Paul would say sell it all in favor of the ATM and liquidate some Bitcoin. Matt and team have said, no, you know what, HODL's important and we're not going to touch it. So great point, Anthony. We'd love to hear it in the comments. You guys, thanks for tuning in to the early one today. We've got Hut 8 coming out later. Leave a comment, hit subscribe, you guys. Hit the comment section up, and we'll see you soon.